This little whiskey here has some very, very big shoes to fill. Does it match up to its previously released fantastic brethren? The answer might surprise you. Let's drink some whiskey. Welcome to Whiskey and Whiskey. I'm the Whiskey Chaser Brian. I hope you're keeping well. Fresh off the bottling line, the highly anticipated second limited edition release in the Iberian series. Third overall, second limited edition. The Redbreast Tawny Port Cask Edition is a single pot still Irish whiskey initially matured in a combination of bourbon and Oloroso sherry casks, and to add a new dimension to the flavor profile, a portion of these maturing whiskeys were recast into tawny port casks for a number of years. All of the whiskeys were then blended by Billy Lighton and Dave McCabe and recast in freshly seasoned tawny port hogsheads for a final maturation period of between 14 to 25 months. This is a non-age statement tawny port finished Redbreast, bottled at 46% ABV, which is 92 proof, and this release sees a 25% increase in price from the previous PX releases, from 80 euros to 100 euros. Some people are charging more than this. Shame on you charging more. Like I said, the second limited edition release in the Iberian series, but when you count the series anchor, the beautiful Lustau Redbreast, it's the third release overall. The Lustau being available on a continued basis. I reviewed both the Lustau and the PX Redbreast on my channel upon release, and I will leave a link up here and down there in the description box below. The real question is, how does this new release stand up to the previous releases? Anyone who has had the Redbreast PX release knows it's a hard one to beat. It's absolutely delicious, and it's a favorite amongst many, and even commands a fairly hefty and ridiculous secondary market price tag now. The Lustau release is something I really enjoy also. I love the woodiness of it, and a lot of the flavor profiles of both whiskeys just tick all the right boxes for me. So this really does have a lot to live up to. Fancy glass for my ass, we pour. So 46% ABV Redbreast Tawny Port limited edition, the second limited edition release in the Iberian series. I've given it a minute or two off camera to kind of open up, breathe a little bit. I don't like kind of offering a freshly poured whiskey up to my nose. Just like to give it a couple of minutes, just to get rid of that neck pour that I find some of my whiskeys suffer from. On the nose. The first thing that kind of comes through is that real toasted oak note and a little bit of honey. There's a herbal character, or herbal, depending on where you're from in the world. And then it kicks into the next gear. You're getting more kind of a plum juiciness note to it. Caramel, although the plum is a touch bit subdued for my kind of liking. I'd like it a little bit more kind of forward on the fruity notes, but lots of toasted oak, pot still spices, plum, caramel. There's even a nuttiness there to it, kind of like not an almond, not a peanut, but more of a walnut to me. This is definitely sweet, but it takes a while to open up and not as vibrant or as fruity. Think more kind of toasted oak with hints of nuts and maybe a touch of that plum. And depending on what way you look at it, even a little bit of like a cherry drop, like a boiled sweet, like a cherry boiled sweet, but it is quite subdued. Let's have it on the palate. Let's launch it. So yeah, dried fruit notes are coming through. Obviously from the Oloroso, you're getting that little bit of vibrant kind of fruit. So like I said on the nose, a little bit of plum, but that follows through on the palate as well. That's what I'm getting. Lightly tannic, as in woody. It is creamy. It does have that note going for it. It is a little bit more on the palate, kind of on the creamy side. There's definitely a gentle orange citrus there as well. Just one more for the road. Let's launch it. It's a touch nutty. There's a chocolatey walnut kind of note there. Lots of toasted oak. On the finish then, it carries on a nice bit. That toasted oak really does kind of shine through and hold on. The fruits kind of fade out and you're left with kind of more of a nuttiness, sweetness, toasted oak. So if that makes sense. The pot still spices are still there, obviously giving plenty of heat and warmth in the mouth, but the toasted oak definitely finishing it out. You know what? Why not? Let's launch it. Definitely a lot more going on in terms of the palate here than the nose. Totally different to the Redbreast PX, tannic. Not so much bitterness, but definitely more that nuttiness, toasted oak, pot still spices on the end with a nice little bit of fruit sweetness kind of fading out and coating the mouth really nicely. It's not a bad whiskey by any means, but stand by, I'll give you my opinion and my verdict. Okay, so my opinion. I don't think this is a bad whiskey by any means. I think that people were giving this going a little bit too hard on this in some of the Facebook groups. I do feel like the palate has a lot more to offer here than, say, the nose. I think it lacks a touch on the nose side of things. Also, I really don't think this lives up to the PX or even the Lustau. It's just missing that little touch of specialness they have or have had. Sure, it's not as dry as the Lustau, but definitely misses out a touch on flavor. Where I have an issue with this whiskey lies within the pricing, and I'm not privy to any kind of info behind the scenes in Midleton in terms of costs or price hikes, but my opinion is a 25% hike in price is substantial and kind of puts this whiskey out of the whole value for money side of things. You can still get a Redbreast Lustau online between 75 to 85 euros, much better value, and where this whiskey should have been priced in my honest opinion. Someone at Irish Distillers is clearly watching the secondary Irish market and auctions, or it's just simple price gouging. Now, my verdict, while taking in my opinion, is that while it's not a bad whiskey, I don't think it's something I'd be willing to part another 100 euros with this time around. I did buy a few of the PX releases and happily devoured every single one of them, but this is definitely a case here of value for money having a big effect on my purchasing. Well, with that said though, have you yourselves tried it? What did you think of it? And would you buy another bottle of it? What are some of the prices like where you've had? I've heard some crazy prices between 110 and like 180 euros. Leave a comment in the section down below and let me know. So that does it for this episode, but once again, I'm very interested to hear what you've thought of it. I'll leave it at that and we will chat soon. Sláinte.